time for Patriot Uprising with Timothy Shea.
Clear for takeoff. It's a long way to the top if you wanna rock and roll.
Alrighty then, welcome to Patriot Uprising with Timothy Shea. Boy, it's been a minute, hasn't it? I want to thank Wade and Kevin at Boxcast for giving me the solution to fix the color problem. I thought I was going to need a brand new computer, and with the software patch they gave me, the color correction patch, the stream is clean enough for Boxcast to pick it up. It's not great. I look even whiter than I usually do, but as my good friend Wally dubbed me, I am the original white boy. We have a lot to talk about, don't we? It is a really interesting time. But before we get into it, I want to thank all of you that contributed to Sherry Lynn's GoFundMe, and I especially want to thank Sherry Lynn for setting that up. None of this would be possible without your generosity, and I want to thank you for that. Okay, it has been fun. I've got to say, these haven't been the president's greatest 2 weeks. As I said to a friend today, Donald Trump's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness, and that is that he was never a politician. It's a tremendous strength, having never been a politician. The problem is, having never been a politician, he doesn't know who the good guys are, he doesn't know who the bad guys are, he doesn't know who he can really trust. He kept his business really tight, mostly within the family. But even among his executives, it was a really tight core. And it's difficult to run a government that way. You know, if you're keeping decisions from your Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, people aren't in the loop on what your thinking is, how your thinking is evolving. If they're finding out what their agency's policies are by reading your Twitter feed, that's not so good. And you know, I think he'll pull out of this. I think it's fine. But this, you know, the pullback on the ICE arrests, and I want to see McAleenan indicted. Okay, 18 USC 1001. He needs to be indicted. Leaking the fact that there were going to be ICE raids last weekend, that's a felony, and he needs to go. But the deeper issue is, what on earth is President Trump doing with appointing an Obama holdover as acting Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, one of our three most and arguably the most important of our federal agencies? It doesn't make any sense why McAleenan is even in position to leak the details of the ICE raids in the first place. All of this is going to play out. I have profound confidence in the president. I love what he's doing with the tariffs. You know, my friend Nathan Goethe is 10 times the economics expert I will ever hope to be. Nathan actually keeps track of the quantity of cargo containers that are being shipped every month between the US and Europe, between US and Asia. He's on top of trends. You know, he signaled the weakening of the economy way before everybody else did. And, you know, the president talked about the Dow on Saturday, and yeah, the Dow is doing well, but there's some weakness in the economy, and it needs to be addressed. I disagree with Nathan, however, because he is 100% against tariffs, and I am too, as I have said before, in a tariff-free world. But when you're not in a tariff-free world, when you have China manipulating its currency to take us to the cleaners, when you have countries taking advantage of us in trade deals because our people, and here's the thing, everybody's being very generous and saying, oh, they were just really poor deal makers. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. Republican and Democrat, they hate you, they hate me, they hate America. Two wings of the same dirty bird. There's a reason I left the Republican Party in 2010, and that's it. Okay, the Republican establishment is cozy with the Democrat establishment. And this isn't the defense attorney going at it hammer and tongs with the DA in court and then going out for a steak dinner later that night. This isn't that, where you have a small community of, you know, members of the bar, and you know, some are on the prosecutor's side, some are on the defense attorney's side, and there are a lot of friendships. Now there's a lot of antagonism between different people as DAs and defense attorneys as well, but a lot of them are friends. They went to law school together, they went to college together, they grew up together. You know, people are people. Just because you have a job doesn't mean you're not friends with your friends, right? You keep your job on your job, you keep your friendship. Just like, you know, players for the Yankees and the Red Sox might be friends. It doesn't mean that they're going to collude on the field. One of them's going to throw up a softball, a big watermelon to the other one to hit over the fence. No, you know, between the lines, you go at it hammer and tongs. When you walk across the lines, you know, back to the real world, you're still friends. Well, it's the same way in the legal community. And it's the same way in politics. Okay? This animosity and antagonism would be unfortunate if it weren't for the fact that they hate you, they hate me, they hate America. And this isn't me being divisive, this is me taking them at their word. Okay? If you're with people that want to destroy you, your way of life, and everything that you stand for, it is your moral obligation to oppose them vigorously, vociferously, not violently, but vigorously. All right? Let's do something. I don't have, you know, my board op is a real noob. I might be 30 years in the tech business. And yes, Patriot Uprising with Timothy Shea is brought to you by Cult 45 LLC, the official sponsor of Patriot Uprising with Timothy Shea. I might be 30 years in the tech business. I might have co-founded a software company, but this production software, even though it's freeware, it is profoundly powerful. The problem is, with great power comes great responsibility for the board op, and I'm not quite there yet. So we're not going to have fancy transitions, but we're going to go and we're going to look at the desktop. I'm not going to be down in the corner anymore, but you're going to be able to see what I'm looking at. This is very interesting. Russia warship docks in Havana. This is brand new. Echoes of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Russians today said that they are going to have overflights, observational flights. Basically, they're going to run spy flights over U.S. territory. I think that the president needs to shut that down pronto. You know, the Democrats, though, this is the greatest one right here. Bernie faces new kind of threat in Elizabeth Warren. Dems form circular firing squad. It's an absolute clown car, commie clown car campaign season so far. And remember what I said, they're going to veto and booty plug you and Bernie you until you've had communism up to the gills, and then in is going to stroll Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, she's pretty. Oh, she is a military veteran. Oh, she's a moderate. She's not like the other Democrats. Yeah, she is. She's just as hard left, just as socialist as the rest of them. Don't be fooled by Tulsi Gabbard, whom I have dubbed the most dangerous Democrat in America. Global warming? Oh, we've only got 12 years to live, but Colorado's snowpack is 40 times normal. 40 times normal snowpack in Colorado. Okay? It is not, the world is not going to end in 12 years. I had a little fun with occasional Cortex on the twatter and said, but wait, Al Gore said that we only had 12 years until Manhattan was underwater, and that was 20 years ago. These people, they think you have no memory. Now, granted, the younger generation has vaped their brains into the sewer, and they've got the attention span of a gnat, but we boomers, who they love to ridicule, yeah, we know a thing or two about a thing or two, don't we? This is a very interesting, and a lot of people have gone splody and they shouldn't. This is a very interesting development. Gorsuch siding with the liberals on a federal criminal law case on Friday, ruling that the law was unconstitutionally vague. And Kavanaugh dissented, saying that it would diminish public safety. But here's the way it's supposed to work. The president or the House or the Senate will introduce legislation, unless it has to do with spending, in which case the bill must arise in the House, unless it's called Obamacare. And the legislation is debated in committee, and then it's reported out of committee or not, and then it is debated on the House and Senate floors, and if it is passed by both houses, it is sent to the president, who can either veto it or sign it, and if he vetoes it, it goes back to the House and Senate, and if there is a sufficient majority to override the veto, 2/3 of the senators and the representatives want it passed over the president's objections, then the veto is overridden and it becomes law. However, and the president exercised executive review when the law was sent to him, or the bill was sent to him, the passed bill was sent to him, and he exercised executive review in deciding whether to sign it or whether to veto it. Supreme Court will likely rule on the constitutionality of the law down the road. And in this case, they said, no, Congress, you did not define what quote-unquote crime of violence means. And so this isn't the end of the road. The process then is Congress can now redraft the legislation more narrowly tailored to comport with the Supreme Court's limitation. You got a problem with crime of violence? Great. We repass the same bill, except now there's a definition. Crime of violence includes, and then you give a laundry list of all the crimes you were talking about. Okay? And that law will then be constitutional. So I am not overly concerned that Neil Gorsuch, whose jurisprudence I admire greatly, sided with the liberals on this, and because in this case they were right. However, that's not what we've had We also had a great property rights case that came down on Friday, and Elena Kagan has her knickers in a twist because it also overrode precedents, just like the case earlier in the session in which Justice Breyer said, you know, now we've got to wait. How long is it going to be before the next precedent is overturned? So let me explain stare decisis to you. Stare decisis is Latin for to stand by that which has been decided. Okay, so you want our jurisprudence to be based on stare decisis. You don't want subsequent courts overturning prior precedent willy-nilly, because that will diminish respect for the rule of law. That will diminish the confidence that people have in the stability of the United States legal system. Why do you think so much foreign money comes here for investment? Because we are a safe, stable, financial republic. Okay, all of a sudden the state isn't going to privatize the company that you have invested in, and there goes your investment, like they did in Cuba, in Venezuela, in a whole host of other countries. America is safe because we are a relatively stable country legally. However, stare decisis is not the end of the analysis. It is a starting point. Okay, these liberals would have you think, well, I guess they'd actually like the fact that, I guess they wouldn't like the fact that Dred Scott was overturned, because Dred Scott was one of their decisions. Chief Justice Taney was a Democrat. But when you have a decision like Dred Scott that declares that Negro Americans, and yes, that was the parlance back then, so that's the term I'm going to use, that Negroes were not human beings. You really want that to remain the law of the land? I don't think so. There is a decision that was ripe for overturning, and it was overturned in Brown versus School Board of Education in the 50s. Okay, another decision that is ripe for overturning is Roe v. Wade, because if you read it, it is one of the most tortuous legal analyses the Supreme Court has ever put out in its entire history. It is an absolute mishmash. It is horribly written, horribly conceived, and believe it or not, all of these bills allowing mothers to kill their babies right up to the moment the last hair on the head pops out would be illegal under Roe. You know, these women are screaming, you know, save Roe, save Roe, save Roe. Okay, you really want to save Roe? Great, no third trimester abortions. Under Roe, third trimester abortion was only permitted to save the life of the mother. Okay? That's what they want. Let's give it to them. Oh, wait, no, we didn't mean that. We didn't mean that. Well, what do you mean? What you mean is that you want to kill babies regardless, and we all know it. Okay, so Elena Kagan was really upset that stare decisis was not followed, and that another Supreme Court precedent, which was horribly decided and wrongly decided, was overturned on Friday. And the case on Friday involved a law that said that cemeteries had to remain open to the public during daylight hours. And there was a family with a large acreage that had a small family cemetery on the land. You know, we've all seen this. Large farms that have under a tree will have a few headstones going back to the 1800s. That land has been in the family for generations, and generations of the family are buried on the property. Well, this town came in and said, you have to abide by this law and maintain public access to the cemetery during daylight hours. And the family said, the hell we do. And they took him to court. It was correctly decided that, and the issue before the Supreme Court, because remember, the Supreme Court is not a trier of fact, okay? Your district court is the trier of fact. That's where you have a trial before a judge or a jury, and that gives you your original verdict, and that is based on the merits. But then you enter the appellate process. You go to the Circuit Court of Appeals and then the Supreme Court, or in some cases directly to the Supreme Court. And the only thing that is argued at that level is constitutionality, whether the law was constitutional. The Supreme Court, the Appellate Court, Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court do not go back and relitigate the case. They don't hear witnesses. They don't look at the facts. None of that matters. All that matters are, what were the constitutional issues? Well, in this instance, the constitutional issue was that the state was claiming that the family had to exhaust all of its state court remedies before going to the federal court. And that is clearly not true, because the family had a Fifth Amendment takings argument. Okay, the government, by saying that they had to maintain public access to their land, to their family cemetery during daylight hours, constituted a public taking, and which had to follow Fifth Amendment procedures. Because it didn't, the family was arguing it was an unconstitutional taking. Well, the state came back and said, no, they couldn't go directly to federal court. They have to come to state court and exhaust all their state court remedies first. And the Supreme Court said, no, although the Constitution applies to the states by virtue of the 14th Amendment, if you have a constitutional issue, you can avail yourself directly to the federal system. You do not have to go to federal court first, or to state court first. So that decision was correct, and Elena Kagan is upset because it overturned a decision that was wrongly decided, that, as the court said in this opinion, went against all of its other takings jurisprudence. So that case was an outlier. That case was wrongly decided, and that case was in conflict with other takings clause cases. And so this court overturned the precedent that was wrongly decided. That's how we want the system to work. It is self-correcting. If there's a bad decision in future, we will change it so that it becomes a good decision. Okay? It is the way that the federal system is supposed to work. I'm trying to find, here's the other court. Here's the other case I was talking about. I forgot you could see what I'm talking about. Here's the case, property rights dispute. This came out last Friday. Justice Breyer in May dissented in Franchise Tax Board of California v. Hyatt, which overturned a 1979 decision that said that states have sovereign immunity in the sister state courts, and that case was wrong. Hyatt is correct that no, you can sue a state you can sue another state in your state's court. So this case, which is Nick versus Pennsylvania, or Nick versus Township of Scott, it's a Pennsylvania case, and Williamson County ruling imposes an unjustifiable burden on takings plaintiff, conflicts with the rest of our takings jurisprudence, and must be overruled. A property owner has an actionable Fifth Amendment takings claim when the government takes his property without paying for it. Okay? This is a great decision, and it's even better because it got Elena Kagan's knickers in a twist. Although I will give her credit, I was really surprised that she voted with the majority on the cross memorial, the World War I memorial that incorporated a cross She voted with the majority in that case, which was nice to see. Now, here is the real big news of the day. 7-Eleven begins Slurpee delivery. Slurpees incoming! Blue raspberry, please. But it's not just enough. Not just enough that 7-Eleven delivers Slurpees. We want free Slurpees. I suffer from heat issues. I get heat exhaustion and heat stroke very easily. Slurpees are a health necessity for me. I demand free Slurpees. If we're going to give reparations all around, if we're going to give free college tuition all around, if we're going to, Bernie wants to just wipe out something like 11 billion, zillion, gazillion, trillion, bazillion dollars in student loan debt. He just wants to make it disappear. I think we need, and Kamala, I still don't know whether Kamala has to pay herself reparations, because she is the great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter of a white slave owner in the Bahamas. So does she have to pay herself reparations? It's just all naked pandering. The commie clown car campaign season is what I'm calling it. The Democrats are all in a race. I'm farther to the left. No, I'm farther to the left. No, I'm farther to the left. No, I'm a freaking commie. That's what Trump is up against in 2020. And I think it's great that their hatred for America, their hatred for capitalism, it finally, because the Democratic Party died in the streets of Chicago outside the 1968 Democrat National Convention. The protesters that were on the streets in Chicago protesting the Democrats were delegates in the convention in 1972. That's when the communists gained their final foothold in the Democrat Party. Why do I say final foothold? Because McCarthy was right. But the Democratic Party is dead. The Democrat Party is full-blown communist, has been full-blown communist for over a generation. They just weren't honest about it. Why do you think Tim Russert changed the colors? That's right, he changed the colors. In England, the Tories, the Conservatives, are blue. Labour is red. Republicans were always blue. Democrats were always red, and I can prove it to you. 1984 presidential election results map. Okay? Images. This has all been changed. This is the correct map right here. They called it a red pool float in a sea of suburban blue. 49 states went for Ronald Reagan in 1984. 49 states voted GOP. 49 states were blue states. Only Minnesota and the District of Columbia were red. Democrats are red, Republicans are blue. Tim Russert flipped that in 2000 so that you wouldn't realize that Democrats were actually communist. Why? Because communist is the red color. Better dead than red? Well, better dead than red doesn't mean anything vis-a-vis communism if the Republicans, if the conservatives are red, now does it? Nor does the phrase blue dog Democrat have any meaning. A blue dog Democrat is a Democrat conservative that votes with Republicans. So he completely flipped it, cravenly, I argue. I'd love to have the debate with him, but unfortunately Tim passed. None of this is personal, and I think he was a Buffalo guy, Western New York guy. I think he was a pretty good guy in real life. But politically, he was not only on the other side of the aisle, I think he did America a great disservice by flipping the colors. And to be perfectly candid with you, I don't know whether it was of his own volition or, which I believe is probably more likely, he was told to do it. Now, why would he have been told to do it? For the same reason, to keep people from realizing, because again, they knew through Common Core and all of their perversion of our educational system, they knew that the younger generations were going to have the attention span of gnats, have no understanding of history, and completely lack critical thinking skills. So if they changed the colors and made Republican red, then they wouldn't know about better dead than red. They wouldn't know about blue dog Democrat. They wouldn't realize that subtle mind control had been used on them by getting them to associate conservatives with red and not the communist Democrats. So that is why I have started hashtag Take Back the Blue, because we do not need any more communism in America. We need to stop it. But here they all are. I'm farther to the left. No, I'm farther to the left. I'm the biggest socialist. I'm a damn communist. Well, we need to make sure that these people never ever have power again. So I am using this Slurpee. My demand is for Slurpee reparations. I demand delivery of free Slurpees to my home because I hate summer so much, and it is just an argument reductio ad absurdum. You reduce it to the absurd, and so then you point out the logical fallacies, the logical failings of the argument by reducing it to an absurd level. Okay, so by me demanding free Slurpees, I am pointing out the ludicrous logic underlying obviating trillions of dollars in student loan debt and, reparations, which is nothing more than pandering to black voters. It's an insult to black voters. Let's see what else. Vitamin D supplements have no impact on heart health. They don't lower the risk for disease. Researchers are surprised. Well, once again, Timbo's proven correctly, we don't need sun to survive. I am walking, talking, breathing, thinking, speaking proof of that. I am not a sun guy at all, and the sun and I have a very contentious relationship. And of course, vitamin D is the only vitamin that our body manufactures, and it does manufacture it in response to sunlight, and a certain amount of vitamin D is necessary. However, most people get enough vitamin D in milk and the sunshine that they get. Taking supplements does nothing additional for you. This amazed me. Why is Illinois hemorrhaging residents? Seriously? You can't figure it out. Why is Illinois hemorrhaging residents? This is absolutely stunning. It's like, why is the man who eats 7 meals a day of 6 Big Macs, 3 McChickens, 2 Whoppers, and a bucket of KFC fat? I mean, seriously, they can't figure out Democrat government equals Democrat shitholes equals states where people flee. Baby Mario has come out and said he does not want registered conservatives in this state. Baby Mario has come out and said if you support 2A, he does not want you living in New York State. Well, guess what, Baby Mario? You're not going to be in office forever, and eventually upstate is going to rise up. Hillary only won 12 upstate counties, and most of them were in the New York metro area. The only, we don't consider Yonkers upstate, okay? Down in the city and on the island, they consider Yonkers upstate. Yonkers is not upstate. Yonkers is downstate. Everything above Orange County is upstate. You know, if you take the Pennsylvania line and you continue it off east, what's below that line is downstate and we're upstate. So, you know, I used to sell classified advertising for the Syracuse newspapers when I was in grad school. That was my part-time job. And we charged the ad based on where the business was located, if it was a business ad. And if you were in Syracuse, you got a lower rate. If you were in central New York, you got a slightly higher rate. And if you were outside of our readership area, you paid what was called the national rate. So it didn't matter, you know, whether you were in Buffalo or Burbank, you were paying the national rate, right? So in determining how much I needed to charge for an ad, I asked this gentleman, do you have an office upstate? He was in Poughkeepsie, and he said, no, we're in Poughkeepsie. And I realized, okay, well, arguably Poughkeepsie could be considered upstate. So, sir, do you have an office in central New York? Yes, we're in Poughkeepsie. Well, you know, you might argue that Poughkeepsie is upstate. There is no way possible anyone could make an argument that Poughkeepsie is in central New York. Poughkeepsie is a Hudson Valley town, for those who don't know. And I finally, you know, made it really clear. I said, sir, do you have an office in the Syracuse metropolitan area? And he said, no, we're in Poughkeepsie. So other than the downstate counties, the only upstate counties that were won were Erie County, which is Buffalo, Monroe County, which is Rochester, Onondaga County, which is Syracuse, Albany County, and Schenectady County, which is the capital district. It won Essex, which is the poorest New York county. It's the far northeastern county on Lake Champlain. And of course, it won Tompkins County, where Ithaca is. Ithaca is like the Berkeley of the East. Okay, so the rest of the state was all Trump. My county went for Trump. Every county around went for Trump. She only won a handful of upstate counties. Unfortunately, the 4 counties that she won in the city, and Nassau County and Westchester County, were enough to win the whole state by like 65%. It was 60% to 39%, I think she won. The upstate votes don't matter at all, and that is the problem living here in New York State, the once great empire state, I call it. The Democrats have absolutely killed us, and to be perfectly candid, a lot of it was done under Republican governors too. They tried to hold the line. Some of them didn't care to hold it as much as others did. We had the state Senate. We no longer have the state Senate, but the Assembly has always been a problem. These people are rabid leftists, and New York State government was always called 3 men in a room. Okay, you had the Speaker of the Assembly, you had the President of the Senate, and you had the governor. And what would happen is they would have a lunch meeting, or they'd get together, and the 3 of them would hash out what the legislative agenda was going to be for the session, what was going to be passed, and come to agreement on how the state should be governed. And then the President of the Senate would go back to the Senate, and the Speaker of the Assembly would go back to the Assemblyman, and they would carry the final deal back to their house, and that's the legislation that was proposed and passed and sent to the governor for signing. But it was all backroom deals. It's called 3 men in a room. That's the way New York State government was for years. Well, the 3 men in the room, 2 of them ended up in prison for corruption. How does Baby Mario not get charged? He was in the room. He was in on all the deals that Skelos and, I'm spacing the Silver, Skelos in the Senate and Silver in the House, or in the Assembly, were both convicted. Skelos got out and had a retrial, but then he was reconvicted. So they're in prison, and Baby Mario skates. He doesn't even get indicted. In what planet is that possible? 2 out of the 3 guys in the room go to prison for corruption, and the 3rd guy is still the governor? So upstate is going to rise up at some point. There's a lot of talk about, splitting New York into 2 states, just like there is splitting California into 2 states. I don't see it ever happening. I think it's a quixotic adventure at the very least. But President Trump has unified upstate New York more than any national politician since Ronald Reagan. Of course, President Trump is the greatest president since Ronald Reagan. He's arguably the only conservative president we've had since Ronald Reagan. We've got an 11th man, a New York man. I saw this earlier, I'm not seeing it right now, but a New York man is the 11th American to go to the Dominican Republic and die. I don't know why people would continue to go to the DR. There's serious problems down there, clearly. So, if you've got plans to the DR, if you've got family, anybody you know going to the DR, tell them, yeah, you might want to rethink. Go visit America, okay? We've got 50 great states. We've got Puerto Rico. We've got Guam. You want a tropical paradise? Go to Guam. Okay, there's a nice vacation for you. Go to the Marianas Islands. Go to the U.S. Virgin Islands. How about that? You want a beautiful Caribbean vacation? Why not go to the U.S. Virgin Islands? Why would you go to the DR? Let me see if there's any last things. Not on. Oh yeah, this was fun. Kangaroo was seen hopping across a Wisconsin walking bridge. That's not something that you get to see every single day. Let's go over to the Twitter and see what the president's got cooking. He announced a tweet party for the Dem debates. So, the next week there are going to be 2 debates, 2 nights. They're not going to do the kiddie table like the Republicans did in 2016. They're actually going to have 2 different nights of debate. I don't know why this is so big, so let's start over again. So they're going to have 2 different nights of debates, and the president is going to have a tweet party. And I think that's going to be great fun. I had a little bit of fun today. Dinesh got Timbo-tized in a good way. Let's take a look at that quickly. James O'Keefe came out with a great expose of Google trying to prevent another 2016 situation, quote unquote. Okay, we've long known that Google skews its results. All you need to do is do a Google search for Donald Trump emails and see all the results, and then do a Google search for Hillary Clinton emails. You won't get one single search result. Okay, that's just an extreme version, but we know that Google skews its search results. Well, they figured out that we won by talking to each other on social media, which is why Fascist Books shut me down, which is why, through the grace of all of you with your financial support, I was able to build this platform so that even if YouTube shuts me down, even if Periscope shuts me down, which is Twitter, I will still have PatriotUprising.tv. They can no longer shut me down and shut me up. I will not sit down. I will not shut up. And thanks to you, I don't have to. So Reddit suspended at Project Veritas. Okay, so I said perhaps they should change their name to Bandit. Okay, that's a pun. Let me explain it to those people in Yorba Linda. Reddit, R-E-D-D-I-T, is a pun on read it. I read it. Get it? So bandit, it means not only a thief, but B-A-N-N-E-D-I-T. We bandit. So there you go. Reddit is now, in Timbo world, Reddit is now officially referred to as Bandit. And it's, oh, I know, I've got to go to tweets and replies because my tweet was a reply. I replied, Mr. President, today is welcome. Time is needed for comprehensive immigration reform. Families belong together. Well, Princess Polly Grip, it will only take 15 minutes to get done. Why do you hate America and Americans so much? But Dinesh posted, I'm trying to keep the Ilhan, Minnesota story, Incest Omar, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Trying to keep the Incest Omar story straight. She married her brother to evade immigration laws. Then she divorced him and illicitly filed joint tax returns with another guy years before they were married. I was prosecuted for doing far less. Why hasn't she been indicted yet? And I said, because the red-green access protects their own, silly. Sheesh. You're such a hater. Keep fighting the good fight, Dinesh. We're behind you 100%. For those of you who don't know, the red-green axis is communism and Bullwinkles. That's what's going on in the world today. Totalitarianism on the march. Communism aligned with Bullwinkleism is what the problem is. And the commies think that they're using the Bullwinkles, and the Bullwinkles know that they're the ones using the commies. Poor Bette Midler. She went in for a facelift, and they gave her face a vag rejuvenation instead. Then they threw in a lobotomy for free. You know, the hatred for Melania Trump is surpassed only by how awesome Melania Trump is in not giving a flying fig. She wears it as a badge of honor, just as I wear being in Facebook jail 8 months out of the preceding year as a badge of honor. Okay, here you have a high fashion model, and yet the press is oohing and eyeing over 3 dumpster fires in France. Seriously? Come on. Just because some dude was with a couple borrowed daughters and they had clothes on doesn't make them fashion icons. What was I alluding? Let's go to my Facebook. I think there we go. Yeah, Jussie, police asked Jussie if he wanted to take the noose off from around his neck. And he replied, nah, man, I'm good. I got to get it back to the props department before sunrise. I don't want to misplace it. Seriously? If this were something real, and you show up and you're hanging out with the cops telling them what happened and you still have the noose around your neck, please, please. Okay? People that don't realize this, yeah, Vietnam War protests, those were all funded by the communists. We know this now. Since the Soviet Union fell, we got access to all of the files. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were traitors. They were properly executed. McCarthy was right. Communists were completely infiltrated into Hollywood. And guess where else? Into the Catholic Church. They invaded the Vatican in 1930. It is well documented that communists infiltrated the Vatican to try to overturn our Lord's Church. However, the Catholic Church will prevail against the very gates of hell. It's right there in the New Testament. But the Vietnam protests were all organized and funded by communists. Equal rights amendment and abortion pushed by communists. And here it is, the Democratic Party died in the streets of Chicago outside the 1968 DNC. By 72, the communist infiltration was accomplished. Many of those protesters, many of those Alinskyites, because don't forget, Saul Alinsky led that protest outside the 1968 DNC. They were on the floor as delegates in 72. But I want to call your attention to this. Barbara Cook found this, and this is a great dig. This is a marriage certificate from Hennepin County in Minnesota. Okay, it is dated February 20th, 2009, so 10 years ago. It is a marriage certificate for Ahmed Nur Saeed Ilami Kaboom and Incest Abduli Omar. Now, we've got two Bullwinkles who signed their names to this legal document. This is a legal document. Two Bullwinkles signed their names. What is 479 Prairie Center Drive, Eden Prairie, Minnesota 55344? Annette Lycum did amazing research, and that is the county courthouse for Hennepin County. So this is a courthouse wedding. And now we've got Wylisha Harris, and it looks like minister was written in later, okay? Whoever wrote minister did not write Wylisha Harris. Now, that could be fine. She could have filled it out and handed it to the clerk, and the clerk said, and what was your role in all this? And she said, I was the minister, and the clerk signed minister. That's understandable. But why is Wylisha Harris's address 479 Prairie Center Drive, Eden Prairie, Minnesota 55344 if she's a minister? That's the county courthouse. County courthouse doesn't have a minister. Was she just a clerk in the county clerk's office who was also ordained as a minister? That's not how you spell Wylisha Harris. Okay, I'm going to show you the dig. But Annette did some great research on this. Now, this is what caught my eye, though. Witnesses were Matt Hirsch and Katie Abramson. Why were two Jews the witnesses at a wedding between two Bullwinkles? Bullwinkles hate Jews. What gives? Well, I'll tell you what gives. As Annette found out, Matt Hirsch is an immigration attorney. Katie Abramson is probably a office assistant to Hirsch. And let me see, where is, I think it's down here. Yeah, here we go. Here's Annette's great research. Why is the minister's name and signature spelled wrong? It's Wylisha with a Y, not an I. Okay, here's a Legal Woman Voters article that Annette dug up. There's Wylisha Wiggs Harris. So why on the, and it's W-Y-L-E-C-I-A. Wylisha's spare time is spent with family, engaging in church activities, which would be understandable if she's a minister, reading and taking care of her dog, cat, and 3 parakeets. Well, why is W-Y-L-E-C-I-A spelled W-I-L-E-C-E-A? Instead of W-Y-L-E-C-I-A, it's W-I-L-E-C-I-A. Let's look at this again. You can see it bigger. W-I-L-E-C-I-A. And that is clearly spelled W-I with a little dot over it. I. Is this a forged document? Is this a fraudulent document? Matthew Hirsch, immigration lawyer, found by Annette Lycum. Annette does phenomenal research. She is one of the members of the tribe that really takes it to heart. She doesn't trust anything I say. She goes and she digs, which I absolutely love, because as I constantly tell people, don't believe it just because I say it. Go find out for yourself. Would a shill say that to you? So here we go, Law Office of Matthew I. Hirsch. Practice concentrating in U.S. immigration and nationality law. An immigration lawyer, Jew, is the witness at a county courthouse marriage of 2 Bullwinkles. Was that a marriage of convenience? Was that a marriage intending to defraud the United States government? I think all signs point to yes. Let's get that investigated. We did the president's. Oh yeah, let's do the president's twatter. We didn't do that yet. We did mine, but we didn't do the president's. He launched a new WinRed site. So, you know, the president hasn't gotten the take back the blue memo yet. I don't think it's going to happen this election cycle, but for 2020, I'm serious. I want the colors switched back. I want blue back. We are blue. We are not red. Tag the Democrat communists with red that is appropriately and properly theirs. Okay, I'm pleased to announce the launch of a new platform that allows the Trump campaign and other Republicans, okay, this platform here, this winred.com, you can trust winred.com is going to support the president and is going to support Republicans. There's been a lot of problems with organizations saying that they're going to support the president, and people have literally given them tens of millions of dollars. And they are not thinking that they are donating to the Trump campaign, and they are not the Trump campaign. That is why Brooke McGowan and I have created MAGA Institute. Our purpose, it's about a plan, not a man. We want people who do not live and breathe politics 24/7 the way we do to be able to walk into the polls with confidence, knowing that the candidates for whom they are going to cast their ballots are on board with the America First agenda. Okay? This isn't Trumpism. This isn't a cult of personality. This is not about this man. This is about what this man is doing. He says it himself. He said it in Orlando the other night. Our movement. How many times have you heard him say our movement? He said in Orlando, your movement. You know, it's our movement, right? He said that he is just the vehicle for our movement. Well, this is our movement. Donald Trump is not going to be president forever, despite the epic, and I'm gonna play that last, the epic tweet that he trolled the left with last week. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the twatter. But he's not going to be president forever. And no, we don't want Donnie. And no, we don't want Ivanka. Knock that nonsense off. No more dynasties. Why would you want Ivanka? Ivanka's a Democrat. Just because her last name is Trump, please. How is that any different than Bush's? We don't want any more Bush dynasties, no more Clinton dynasties, no more Kennedy dynasties, no more dynasties. What we have to do in 2020 is find another America First president to support and get that person, man or woman, into office. So that's what MAGA Institute is going to be doing. Certifying America First candidates to the best of our ability. Now, can candidates sign our questionnaire and answer all the questions the proper way and have us give them a certification and then not govern that way? Why, yes, they can. But fool us once, shame on you. You won't be fooling us twice. So MAGA Institute is now incorporated, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about it soon. And the mission is entirely to provide voters with information they need to know who they can trust to be a MAGA certified candidate. We're looking at people like Mark Meadows. We're looking at people like Matt Gaetz. Okay? People that you know are going to govern by an America First agenda. Despite a Federal Reserve that doesn't know what it's doing, raised rates far too fast, after not raising them once, not once in the 8 years of the Obama administration. Despite a Federal Reserve that doesn't, you see, the Federal Reserve knows what it's doing, and the president knows that the Federal Reserve knows what it's doing. The president is, this is an argument reductio ad absurdum. This is saying the Federal Reserve doesn't know what it's doing. Well, clearly the Federal Reserve knows what it's doing, and what it is doing is opposing the president. raised rates too fast, very low inflation, other parts of the world slowing, lowering, and easing. Our rates are going up. They're trying to kill his economy, and his economy is still going forward, although not as strongly as it could if the Fed was doing the right thing. Again, my three political wishes are repeal 16A, repeal 17A, and end the Fed. And did large-scale tightening, 50 billion per month, meaning tightening of the money supply. We are on course to have one of the best months of June in U.S. history. Think of what it could have been if the Fed had gotten it right. Thousands of points higher on the Dow, and GDP in the 4s or even 5s, the way it was under Reagan. Now they stick like a stubborn child when we need rate cuts and easing to make up for what other countries are doing against us. Blew it. Yeah, well, that's because they're part of the resistance. China gets 91% of its oil from the Strait, Japan 62%, and many other countries likewise. So why are we protecting the shipping lanes for other countries for many years for zero compensation? All these countries should be protecting their own ships on what has always been a dangerous journey. We don't even need to be there, in that the U.S. has just become by far the largest producer of energy anywhere in the world. The U.S. request for Iran is very simple: no nuclear weapons and no further sponsoring of terror. Yeah, well, that's pretty much all Iran's got going for it, is sponsoring terror. I believe that the good Persian people want to overthrow that government, but they don't have the means to do so. They don't have social media to organize. And quite frankly, every time they've tried to rise up against the mullahs, just like the people in Iraq, the U.S. says, rise up, we got your back, just like in the Bay of Pigs. Although it was the generals that screwed Kennedy in the Bay of Pigs by not providing air cover. But the U.S. has an unfortunate history of encouraging people to overthrow totalitarian, despotic governments and then not being there when we're most needed. Well, if the Persian people rise up, the United States will be there to help them overthrow the mullahs, because I do not believe that these now grandmothers who used to wear beautiful clothes in the 70s and are now wearing freaking trash bags, I do not believe that that is what they want for their granddaughters. And the president is exactly correct. Why the hell are we paying to keep the Strait open for China and Japan? Let China and Japan pay for that. Okay, that's just like, no, German Hillary, we're not going to pay your defense costs to protect you from Russian aggression if you do a deal with Russia for natural gas. You're going to kick into NATO according to what you're supposed to be paying, not the vastly reduced amount that you've been allowed to get away with up until now. I just want to leave you now with this tweet from the other day. It was absolutely classic. I hope I can find it. Here it is. Let's watch this video. For some reason, it's not playing the song. And he tweeted that on June 21st from his account. Is that not absolutely beautiful? All right, that's all I've got for you. Let's go back here. Let's get over. Okay, it was great to be back on with you. I apologize for taking so long. I thank you for your patience. Waiting, I thought it was 3 months ago that we started talking about this, and I honestly thought I was going to be on air 2 months ago. And then when I did that video last Friday and there was no sound and the picture was horrible, I was just crushed. It's like, how are we going to get this done? So again, thanks to Matt and Kevin at Boxcast for helping get it done. Remember, we're going to have a big 4th of July sale at cult45llc.com. Watch for it. It's going to be a store-wide sale, but we're going to have a huge reduction, especially on the fragrances. So that's coming up. Watch for MAGA Institute. You're going to be hearing more about that. And you're going to be hearing more from me, because now that we've got this figured out, the broadcast is at least going to be like this. But as my board op learns more and more, he's going to be able to bring you, fancier transitions and a little more polished production. But, we cannot, it's been long enough, and we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of what I hope you think is pretty good. Again, I'm completely washed out in this. I am the original white boy. I'm going to tweak the color correction a little bit, see if I can back into something a little more natural. But at the very least, I did a pretty good job with the chroma key, right? So you're not seeing any green around me, which is really hard to do when you've got white hair, believe me. Silver, platinum. There we go. But it's great to be back with you all. I cannot tell you how much all your love and support and encouragement has sustained me these past few months, knowing that you are part of this great adventure just makes it all the more rewarding for me. Tonight, I'm going to leave you with this. This one goes out especially for my buddy Carver, who just lost his dad. God bless you. God bless these United States. Keep fighting the good fight.